I'm Sonya Krutikova. I'm the director of the Center for the Evaluation of Development Policies at the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and I'm one of the organizers of this conference. And I'm very pleased to have Hiro Yoshikawa here, who has been working on issues around preschool quality in low and middle income settings. We discussed at length yesterday the issue of rapid preschool expansion in low and middle income settings that is ongoing, and how that fits in with our understanding of what it means to provide high quality preschool environments, how much we know about that, how successful we've been at doing that, and that this is a time of great opportunity but also of great risk. So I want to hand over to Hiro to maybe say a few words in general about the field of preschool, understanding of preschool quality.
Sure. I think it's both an exciting time and, as you said, a kind of a sobering time in the arena of pre-primary education globally. So the big global development over the last year, of course, was that the UN ratified the 2015 to 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. They actually include an indicator of at least 1 year of pre-primary education, which I think they refer to as organized learning, for all children. And that applies to the year before primary school entry. And we know there are massive differences in access across regions and countries of the world, with sub-Saharan Africa having probably the lowest, along with other, as a group, the low-income countries, which typically have enrollment rates as low as 15 to 20%. That's the general range for those countries. So to move from that to 100% enrollment is, first of all, a massive investment, and we'll see whether that's going to be possible. The danger is that if we replicate some of what happened with increases in primary school enrollment under the last set of goals, which were 2000 to 2015, we know there were large increases in enrollment in primary school. Unfortunately, we also know that a lot of it was pretty low quality. So the studies that have gone in carefully to see whether children are learning the kinds of things they should learn, basic reading skills, basic numeracy skills, but also a broader range of social skills and emotional skills. Those have been fairly disappointing in some of the same countries that have had the most rapid enrollment. So I think we do need to think about investments in quality, not just putting kids in seats in very large numbers in classrooms that might look very much like primary school. That's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. First, children who are 4 years old or 3 years old or 5 years old are capable of a tremendous amount of learning given high quality teaching and instruction and support, but that is not going to look like rote instruction. It should not look like children are learning to repeat what the teacher says. Children should be encouraged to ask questions, to engage in open-ended conversations. Teachers should be trained. This is actually a very complex period of development for teachers to support social development, cognitive development, language, and numeracy development.
So, and just to sort of build on that a little bit, I think one of the worrying pieces of evidence out there is that preschool can have negative effects. So we're not just talking about, I'm not sure whether we have similar evidence at primary level, but given the stage of development for children and how important it is what they're doing with their time and what environment they're in, we have studies in developed and developing countries especially. There's a study from Ecuador which shows negative effects of a preschool program targeting low socioeconomic group families. So can you talk a little bit about the kind of really the risks of having what these environments look like and where we might really be risking doing harm rather than at least doing no harm through these expansions?
Well, I think there are these instances of negative effects of center-based care or preschool education compared to no. staying at home essentially for young kids. But we should keep in mind that those are in the minority of the studies in either low and middle income countries or in rich countries. So the kinds of studies that use quantitative methods to summarize the effects of multiple evaluations, which are these meta-analyses, those studies, recent ones, one for low and middle income countries, shows an average positive effect on cognitive development of access to early childhood education. Now, that still means we have to be concerned about quality, and I think the route to really avoid those kinds of problems is to actually measure quality, that we should think about not just measuring child learning and access to pre-primary education, but actually add to that the measurement of quality, because we know quite a bit. We are not at like a level of total ignorance about what quality is in early childhood education. We know that responsive and stimulating interactions, warm interactions, and then specific approaches to building early language, for example, or early numeracy beyond simply counting. These kinds of aspects of quality can make a difference. And so I think we need to put that onto the agenda in monitoring and evaluation systems. All education systems have some aspect of monitoring and evaluation. We need to consider better measures of quality for this very new area of early childhood education, and then embedding those into national monitoring and evaluation systems, linking them to approaches to teacher professional development and training. So that sounds easy. It's actually very complicated. There has to be a governmental commitment. There needs to be probably changes in higher education and teacher training institutions to help teachers understand what quality is, to institute it in ways that are not just didactic workshops, for example, for teachers, but actually are provided in ways that motivate teachers to improve their practice.
And it's interesting that all of the strategies that you're proposing and the dimensions of quality that you're talking about have nothing to do with shiny, pretty buildings and even child-teacher ratios, having the nice books, having the kind of physical environment that I think a lot of the investments we see going on in low and middle income countries at school level, but increasingly at preschool level, really focus on. So can you comment a little bit on that?
Sure. So quality has these kind of two big aspects. One are the structural features you just mentioned, which are things like the basic safety of the environment. You don't want kids to be at harm or experience hazards outside of a pre-primary setting, whether it's large animals or construction or that kind of thing. Basic health and hygiene, so access to filtered and clean water, access to good nutrition that hopefully in a low-income country context might represent a substantial chunk of the nutritional needs of that child if they're in there for 4 or 5 hours, as is common. And the ratio of number of children to teachers, degree qualifications, those kinds of things. Those we call structural quality. And then the actual quality of teacher-child interactions, which is, to me, the kind of engine where learning happens, is in these hundreds, thousands of interactions that children have with each other and with their teachers in the classroom over the course of a pre-primary year. That is what we call process quality. It turns out that structural quality can set the stage for good process quality, but it doesn't guarantee good process quality. And if we think of what's the more powerful, proximal influence on children's learning, it's that quality of the teacher-child interactions. And so I think that's the challenge for large-scale national systems. We have instances at local scale, sometimes across an entire city or a part of a country that have produced high quality in low and middle income countries. We have a sense that some high income countries have been able to achieve this over time. But in low and middle income countries, I think it's hard to think of examples where an entire country has been able to implement that well as a national policy.